You are listening to the International Radio Report. Your reactions are much appreciated. Feel free to send them to radioreport@yahoo.com. That is, radioreport@yahoo.com. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, February the 5th. My name's Sheldon. Gilles is with me as usual. We thank you for tuning in to our 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. We are here with you every week at 10:30 Eastern Time, 15:30 UTC. You can reach us by email, radioreport@yahoo.com. We're live streaming and archived at ckut.ca. Our Facebook group, we have crossed the 900 mark. The threshold was passed this week. We welcome Jeff, Armand, and Gerhard, bringing us to 901 members. And our YouTube channel, where you can listen to the show at your leisure, youtube.com/@IRR. We have 772 subscribers. You can subscribe there and receive notice every time there's a new file posted up on the YouTube channel. So we have a lot of information again this week for you. Some interesting news from the BBC that we'll get to in a little bit. First off, though, we want to remind you of the upcoming 2023 NASWA Winter SWL Festival, or Winterfest as we like to call it. It will be taking place via Zoom on Saturday, March the 4th, and the details of the event can be found on the Winterfest webpage, swlfest.com. Right now it's scheduled as a one-day event. The schedule of forums is available on the website. You'll see that there's a wide variety of topics being discussed in those presentations. We're still waiting for registration information. That will be popping up eventually on the page as well. You do have to register to participate. There should probably be a small fee. And CIDX, once again, will be hosting the hospitality suite throughout the event. We will probably be opening up on Friday evening, sort of a welcoming get-together party for everyone who's going to be joining in for the events on the Saturday. One of the highlights is going to be a keynote speaker address by Jeff White, the general manager of Radio Miami International. That will officially open the event on the Saturday morning. So there'll be lots more details coming. We advise you to just keep checking the swlfest.com webpage. And if you're a ham operator, we're working on getting our CIDX ham station up and running at various times during the event as well. We'll have more details on that for you as well once everything is finalized.
So we have a story about longtime CBC radio producer Michael Finley that dies after random assault in Toronto. This is via CBC News. Longtime CBC radio producer Michael Finley died Tuesday from medical complications following a random assault in Toronto's East End, his family has confirmed. In an email to CBC staff, Kathy Perry, Executive Director of News Gathering and Operations, said he will be remembered as an exceptional storyteller, documentary maker, and editor. Perry said Finley traveled the world to produce radio documentaries for a number of programs, including Sunday Morning. If you worked on a documentary with Michael, you were experiencing the pinnacle of the craft, the email said. He was also a driving force behind Dispatches, a documentary program that features the best of CBC's foreign correspondents and freelancers. The program, which aired every week for 12 seasons, promised listeners it would bring you the world. He was later an editor at World at 6, where he was famous for his knowledge of the news. He pushed journalists and producers to tell great stories, and they knew he always had their back in the field, Perry wrote. Michael had strong convictions about writing, story, and structure. Every reporter he ever worked with said the story was made better because of Michael. Finley retired from the CBC in 2010 after working for the public broadcaster for 31 years. In the afternoon of January 24th, Finley was assaulted by a stranger as he walked along Danforth Avenue, a busy thoroughfare known for its many shops and restaurants. Though they did not identify Finley by name, police said in a news release that the victim and the attack fell to the ground and suffered serious injuries as a result. This is sad news and looks like really sad of just being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, being a radio guy, I don't think probably anybody would have recognized him. So it really was sounding like a random attack.
Yeah.
Not that anyone in particular had him targeted, I would think. But yeah, really, really sad. I remember his name appearing on many of the reports, World at 6, and the documentary shows that CBC has done over the years. So that was a sad loss, and one that certainly didn't need to happen, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Here's a story that's close to my heart, being a vinyl guy. I take a lot of flack for that from a lot of people. Like, what? Vinyl? What's that? Well, yeah, that's what we all grew up on record-wise. But this has got a really neat radio connection to it. The story comes from Sarah Smelly of the Canadian Press, January the 28th. Vinyl fans eager to first pick at the 90-year-old Newfoundland radio station's sale. This is in St. John's, Newfoundland, Labrador. Record collectors in Newfoundland will have a chance Saturday to paw through selections from the vast vinyl library belonging to 98-year-old radio station VOWR. Elaine Pond said she planned to be among the first people to go through the door at the St. John's Lions Club Vinyl Record Fair, where the station will have a table set up. It's the first time VOWR has sold any of its records, and Pond said she'll be digging through crates of country and gospel hits from Hank Williams, Elvis Presley, and Johnny Cash. It's a dream for collectors, Pond said in an interview Friday. This will be my vinyl event of the year. I've seen their collection, I know what they have, and I love many of their shows. VOWR launched in July of 1924 as a way to transmit church services to those who couldn't attend in person. Station manager Ron Ledrew said its library is now home to about 50,000 vinyl records. Among the stacks are albums of banjo covers, obscure Anne Murray bangers, and rare recordings from Newfoundland musicians that are likely impossible to find anywhere else. Ledrew was quick to emphasize that Saturday's sale will be of duplicates or surplus records, noting that the station receives many donations of record collections and the duplicates pile up. VOWR's library will remain intact, and much of the easy listening music on its airwaves will still come from those LPs. We're dedicated to keep that going, Ledrew said in an interview. We have country request programs on the weekends, and people call up, and you're not going to get them digitized. You're going to get them off the records. VOWR is on the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's run entirely by volunteers, many of whom have been there for decades. Ledrew, 75 years old, has been volunteering for 55 years. The station has a dedicated listener base of mostly seniors and people over 50, though younger people are tuning in as they become more interested in older music. Ledrew said, commercials now, they're using old music, old songs, he said. It's good stuff. It's got great stories, all put together with music. You don't hear that anymore. In August 2021, the station's transmission tower went down in a lightning storm, and people of all ages stepped up to raise or donate money so it could be replaced. Pond 41 said VOWR is special to a lot of people, her family included. When her mother died in April 2014, VOWR was playing in the background. She was able to go so peacefully, Pond said. And when it came to decide where we wanted to ask for donations in her memory, we asked that people donate to VOWR. Some people from the local vinyl collecting community have been volunteering to help the station sort through its record piles to get ready for the sale. There's community support to push them ahead and give them the help they need for their first time doing this, Pond said. VOWR, some of you may be wondering, well, don't call signs in Canada start with C? Until 1949, Newfoundland was not part of Canada, and all of their radio stations and TV stations and what have you were call signs starting with V, and they allowed, I think, 2 stations only to retain their V call signs in Newfoundland after 1949, and VOWR is one of them.
I mean, can you imagine the records that are there that never have actually been transferred to either cassette or CDs?
Oh, yeah.
You'll find in here. There's some really exotic stuff, some stuff that maybe there's only a few copies of. It must be amazing.
I bet there's a bunch of 78 RPMs in there
Oh, yeah, for
that
sure.
they don't talk about. So there's going to be some gems in that collection for sure. Yeah, I'd like to be there to browse through some of that stuff.
So what's happening with our son? This week was rather quiet. We had, just a few sunspot groups that are very quiet, very small. Quiet conditions in general. There was a little bit of minor geomagnetic storming happening because of a solar wind that brushed against the Earth on Tuesday. And the sunspot number is 56. The solar flux 135 has gone down. There's no significant coronal hole, so quiet conditions are probably going to continue. And of course, to notice if propagation is good, bad, if you want to hear something unusual, you got to do one thing, and it's to turn on a radio and listen.
This is Glenn Hauser, on the air since 1987. You're tuned to the International Radio Report, 30 minutes of radio about radio, every Sunday morning on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal, and live streaming around the globe at ckut.ca.
So we have some news here that is almost disturbing, and it's the BBC Arabic radio that is going off the air after 85 years. This is via Al Jazeera. BBC Arabic Radio has gone off the air, and this is after 85 years of broadcasting as part of a plan to cut costs and focus on digital programming. The corporation said it is cutting hundreds of jobs in its world service and has been forced to make the cuts because of the United Kingdom's government imposition of a freeze on the license fee money it receives. At least 382 jobs worldwide will be cut as the corporation focuses on digital content production amid a $35 million funding gap. The BBC announced in September that the Arabic language radio service was among 10 different foreign languages services that would cease radio broadcasts, and these include Chinese, Hindi, and Persian services. Alastair Campbell, who used to be a strategist and advisor for the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, said the UK government has had to make very difficult choices since the weakening of the economy due to the Brexit and other factors. I think they're very, very sad. I think that people underestimate the impact of the BBC has, Campbell told Al Jazeera, adding that it is an independent broadcaster despite its links to the British government. What that meant for many countries around the world is that they see this as a really important, significant source of proper news gathering, Campbell said. I actually think that the undermining of the BBC is at the heart of the government's strategy. The Arabic language station launched on January 3, 1938 from Egypt. Hossam El-Sokari, former head of BBC Arabic, said the radio service was a lifeline for lots of people in underprivileged areas as they listened to news via small and inexpensive devices. Now they would have to use much more complicated and probably more expensive devices if they wanted to listen and enjoy the BBC services, El-Sokari told Al Jazeera from Cairo. It's quite a sad moment, especially that it was not only a language service, but a service where we had experimented with very early forms of interactions with the audiences, he said. Similarly, former BBC India correspondent Mark Tully described the ending of these radio services as very sad. Radio is a very powerful medium, especially in South Asia, Tully told Al Jazeera. I've seen the impact of radio, and it's quite clear that it is probably the most attractive way of communicating news, he said. Many took to social media to express their sadness and disappointment towards the decision. It's very disappointing that the BBC decided to get rid of one of its most listened to radio services in its history. People in places like Sudan don't have access to modern technology, and they rely on the BBC radio service, particularly the BBC Arabic, for the daily news, one Twitter user wrote. It was shocking news for all Yemeni listeners from all over the country, even the rural and remote areas, another Twitter user wrote. BBC Radio was their only connection to the world. That's really sad news. And we have a follow-up story for this.
Yeah, the BBC World Service shutting down its several foreign language radio services was written up in The Economist, and Mike Terry of the UK passed this along through Glenn Hauser's World of Radio IO group. On the hour, for 85 years, the chimes of Big Ben have sounded across the Arab world, a rare certainty in a region rife with war, revolution, and repression. And then the sonorous tones of the presenter saying, "Huna London," translated, "This is London," at the start of each news bulletin. Well, no more. On January 27th, the British Broadcasting Corporation silenced the oldest foreign language service, BBC Arabic. Many of the World Service's 40-odd language broadcasts face the same fate. Staff say they have been told that by March, the BBC will have stopped television transmissions in Somali, Hausa, and French for Africa, as well as radio output in Chinese, in the languages of Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent, not including Afghanistan. About 1/6 of the World Service's 2,500 jobs are to be cut. This is pretty dramatic stuff.
You know, the problem here is you're cutting languages also that affect millions of people that are in countries, troubled countries, where it's very difficult to actually access any news. You're cutting to people that have a lot of difficulty accessing any type of, modern technology. I mean, it's not everybody that has the internet. Thinking of a digital world as being the future, maybe someday, but I think you're not realizing the impact, especially to the target audiences. I remember a couple of months ago, they were talking about the cuts. Lilian Landor, which is the director of this BBC World Service, was interviewed by the BBC itself, and it was obvious that it's really just a question of money, not thinking about the impact that it will have in the future. Jonathan Marks is well known at the Radio Netherlands and a media network show. He posted on his personal Facebook page that he never thought he'd see the day where the BBC's Arabic service would be shut down. I've said it so many times. I'm tired of a news service, of a media always being thought of as a money amount rather than the importance it has. Too many people will be left in the dark after this.
So many of these areas that they're talking about are areas that are going through difficult times right now. They're looking for some sort of input from outside. How is it being viewed? What's the world thinking about what's going on here? They're getting outside information that they wouldn't be getting from their domestic broadcasters. Their services that are being blocked on the internet in some of these countries, if the people can even get to these sources, digital transmissions and what have you. All of these places talk about people using radios and listening to these broadcasts on a daily basis. They're going to go and turn on their radio and it's not there anymore. They may not have the luxuries that everyone seems to think that everyone has around the planet. But basically, they're saying we're going to continue, but it's going to be on digital platforms, if they even have the possibility of getting that in the places that some of these people live. What did you say you saw somewhere? BBC World Service give it a new name? Yeah,
the name that they gave it on The Economist actually was the worst service.
BBC Worst Service. Yeah, that's sad. That hurts. That's got to hurt a lot of those employees that have worked so hard over the years and made BBC World Service what it is, to hear a statement like that.
It's interesting because the next story that you have is kind of showing us that, well, maybe radio is needed.
Yeah, this is sort of the other side of the coin. This comes from the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty expands broadcasts to Afghanistan despite a Taliban ban. Washington, D.C., the story comes from. Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty's award-winning programming is now available 24 hours a day for millions of Afghan listeners who have come to rely on the broadcaster in the last 2 decades. 2 months after the Taliban removed RFE-RL from AM and FM radio transmitters in Afghanistan, Azadi, as RFE-RL is known locally, is doubling its time on air, providing Afghans with independent news in both Dari and Pashto languages. From 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. local time, Azadi is broadcasting on medium wave on 1296 kilohertz, while during the second half of the day, programming is available on shortwave. This broadcasting milestone comes on Azadi's 21st anniversary and further solidifies RFE-RL's role as a true public broadcaster, the only non-governmental radio broadcaster available 24/7 in Afghanistan. In the last 2 decades, Azadi has become a staple of everyday life. Afghans frequently refer to Azadi as their, quote, national broadcaster, and its mix of news and information is commonly heard in public settings in the country, from marketplaces to taxis. Our expanding program for Afghan audience is indicative of the resilience and creativity of our team and their dedication to continue to reach our audiences in Afghanistan in the face of extreme Taliban pressure, said RFE-RL President and CEO Jamie Fly. Azadi will now be available for Afghans day and night to give them hope for a better future.
There you go. And you know how many countries, we talk about Afghanistan, how many countries in Africa, the Middle East, Asia require and need an outside source. And hey, even in North America, sometimes we might need an external source of news also that could be helpful.
Hint, hint. Exactly. Interesting that they're using 1296 kilohertz on medium wave. They don't say where this is coming from.
Yeah.
If they've been stopped from broadcasting in Afghanistan, it's got to be somewhere close.
Yeah.
I mean, AM signals will travel a good distance at night, especially, but they don't mention in this particular article exactly where that signal is coming from. But good for them on pursuing it and getting that service up on the radio for people to listen to.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests.
Yeah, before we mention the contest, we want to talk about something that's going to be a huge attraction to the amateur radio world, and it is just as we're going to air, just about to become active. The location is a place that probably, unless you're a ham operator or maybe a shortwave listener, you probably have never heard of it. It's a place called Bouvet Island. It's basically as far away from just about anything else on the planet. It's an island down in the Atlantic Ocean, sort of, almost down to Antarctica.
Yeah.
And an adventurous group of people are headed and have just recently made land on the island, and are going to put ham radio on the air from this island. They're using the call sign of 3 Yankee 0 Juliet. And that is their website also, 3 Yankee 0 Juliet, 3Y0J.NO. This is a Norwegian possession island. It's the second most sought after amateur radio entity in the DXCC list of countries on amateur radio. The only one that's above it is North Korea. So this is a place that's only been visited a couple times in history for ham radio operation. We can tell you it's going to be utter chaos on the ham bands when this station finally gets up and running. People all over the world are going to be trying to make contact. They're going to be doing CW, they're going to be doing voice, and they're going to be doing FT8 from the island. Be careful. If you use some of the DX spotting websites that are out there, there are some fake postings that have already started appearing, saying that, we're on the air and we're on such and such a frequency, posting that they are 3Y0J. They are not. As we're recording today, they are still not on the air. We know they've landed on the island. Weather conditions are bad. They have to get all of the equipment and antennas off the ship, installed, up and running, get their tents and whatever set up. There is nothing on this island. It is barren. You were looking at the weather conditions. Yeah. They don't seem to ever change.
All week it's going to be cloudy. Temperatures like roughly from 0 to 3 degrees. It's a very narrow change in temperature. rain at times, windy. It really seems to be a place that you know, the joke that I made to you was, why didn't they choose a Caribbean island of some sort?
Yeah, this is costing like probably millions of dollars, they're saying, by the time this whole thing is said and done. So it's really something special. It's quite unique. They're not going to be easy to hear from, depending on time of day and propagation and all of that. But if you're interested, try to work them, or if you just want to try to tune in and listen, they will QSL to shortwave listeners as well who are able to hear them. So start checking around, check some of the DX spotting sites out there to see if they are up and running. Make sure they're the real one. And if you can't hear them on your radio, go and check some of the online SDRs if you want to just hear what they sound like. You'll be getting lots and lots of information about this over the next, I think they're there for a couple weeks maybe.
Yeah, 22 days.
Anyways, it'll be a lot of fun. Check them out. Bouvet Island, look it up on a map to see just how far out they are. They left from, the tip of
the Falkland Islands.
South America?
Yeah, they left from the Falkland Islands to go there.
From the Falklands, yeah. And it was quite a voyage to get across to the island. They tried it once a little while back and got about a kilometer or two from the island, and the weather was so bad they couldn't land, and they had to turn around and go back, which must have been incredibly frustrating and costly. But they are there now, and hopefully everything works out well. So check it out.
Yeah, and a quick tip here, they're going to be in CW Morse code. They're going to be voice SSB. But on FT8, one little thing that I've noticed, they're always going to transmit a little outside of the standard FT8 frequencies. So note that they're going to be off those frequencies probably to maybe avoid the interference from all of the FT8 stations on the main channels usually.
Right. Check the website, though. It will give you all of that information, and it'll be constantly updated as well as to how things are progressing. So again, 3Y0J.NO. All right, so on with the ham contests. We have a bunch of them coming up again next weekend for you. Starting off with the CQ Worldwide RTTY WPX contest organized by CQ Magazine. 0-100 February 11th to 23:59 Zulu February the 12th. 3.5, 7, 14, 21, and 28 megahertz bands, and it is in RTTY only.
There's going to be the South African Radio League Field Day Contest, 1000 hours Zulu, February 11th to 1000 Zulu, February 12th. And the bands are 160 through 10 meters, and the modes CW, SSB, and digital.
The Japan Amateur Radio League is organizing the Asia Pacific Spring Sprint. It is CW, 1100 Zulu to 1300 Zulu, February the 11th. It's 20 and 40 meter bands only, and CW only is the mode. There's
the Straight Key Contest Club Weekend Sprintathon. That will be from 1200 Zulu, February 11th to 23:59 Zulu, February 12th. Bands 160 through 6 meters, and mode is CW only. The Dutch Amateur Contest Group has the Dutch PACC Contest, 1200 Zulu February 11th to 1200 Zulu February 12th. It is 160 through 10 meters, and this one is both CW and SSB. And there's the Cayman's Club of Japan Top Band Contest, 1200 Zulu February 11th to 1200 Zulu February 12th. The band is 160 meters only and CW only. So that is everything we have for you this week. We thank you for tuning in to us. If you want to go back and check some of our previous shows, you can do that on our YouTube channel, which is called International Radio Report. And we welcome you to join our Facebook group, International Radio Report, where we have 901 members. We thank you all for joining that group. Lots of great information there. We'll do it all again next week, next Sunday morning. We hope you'll tune in then to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.